Welcome to the Hollywood Video Podcast. I'm your host, David Wells, and we're going to talk movies. What kind of movies are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about the kind of movies that most critics don't like. In fact, a lot of critics hate, but they're popular with the general public. We're going to be talking about Adam Sandler's Adam Sandler movies, specifically Happy Gilmore 2. It's so funny. I had a friend who said he's an older gentleman, and he said he never watches movies if critics don't like them. And I wanted to lay into this guy, but it's like a fight you won't win. That baffles me. But then again, I suppose he knows what he likes, and he knows that his tastes line up with the critics' taste, so I personally think he's doing himself a disservice, but no, yeah, what can you do? So, Adam Sandler movies. They're dumb, goofy fun. And I'm kind of wishing I had the C4 energy drink a bit earlier because I'm trying to animate myself and get going and express my thoughts. But I suppose, yeah, let's just go. So, the movie Happy Gilmore 2, it's better than I thought. I will say one of the things about Adam Sandler is he has been at this for 30 something years, I think. I think he's been making movies for about 30 years. He's had a career for 30 something, going on 40. And he hasn't lost any steam. Certainly he's changed, but that's to be expected. At first, all he did was this, like, the kind of stupid, goofy stuff, and he's shown that he can do other things. I remember Roger Ebert saw some of his early dramatic work. This might have been a review from Punch Drunk Love. And he said, man, all that dumb stuff he did before, he was just wasting his time, talents, and energy on that. That's Roger Ebert's opinion. But it's very interesting that I remember my stepmom put it the best way about critics. Like, oh, critics are into weird movies. And she's not wrong. I think the disconnect between critics and the general audience is the general audience, they don't watch movies for a living. They watch movies, as they always have, as a way to escape. Even when a movie is like supposed to be real world or deal with an actual subject, they watch it still to like take a step out of reality, to like disconnect, to regulate themselves a bit. They do it to make themselves feel better. Like a great example, I used to be way more paranoid and worried about the news. Like, I would read a headline and or I would hear about something going on, and I could get nervous enough that it would make my stomach sort of sick. Like, that's how bad it was. I think it has to do with a lot of things that happened in 2020 where prior to 2020, we could just brush something off and go about our daily lives. But we weren't allowed to do that in 2020. It was like, no, you're going to be affected by this. And we were. And it's like, oh, shoot. Things got turned around because of this. what else could happen to force us? And I think people kind of woke up to that. So I'm not as worried as I used to be. But I remember when I still was affected that way, movies helped me out. I remember October 7th when Israel got attacked. I overheard some customers who were military talking. They said something. It's like, oh shoot, something about to happen. And wouldn't you know, the thing that made me feel better, that helped me to not panic, I watched two movies. One was about Bobby Fischer versus Boris Spassky called Pawn Sacrifice, starring Tobey Maguire as Bobby Fischer. And the other was the Super Mario Brothers movie from 2023. Actually, I watched the Super Mario Brothers movie almost every day for a solid week. And that was the thing that, helped me to calm down. It's not a great movie, but for some reason in that moment, that was the thing that sort of helped me figure stuff out and be like, okay, things aren't as bad as all that. I mean, something horrible has happened, but, just calm down. You still have to live life. And I feel that's sort of the disconnect between critics and the general audience. Now, critics, on the other hand, their whole job is watching movies. So I guess they're a bit desensitized. Like, they see kind of the contrivances, the recycled things, the go-to mechanics for how a story ought to function. And it's kind of like if you eat sweets all the time, then nothing tastes sweet anymore. So, I mean, I can understand why they're affected by things the way they are. But again, I don't necessarily agree with them. Like, I suppose their tendency towards liking weird things is the fact that because they're so acclimated to stuff because that's their job, it takes something very irregular to grab their attention or affect them. Who knows? But anyway, we're getting way off topic. Happy Gilmore too. This feels like a movie. Well, simultaneously, it feels like a movie Adam Sandler could have made 30 years ago, but also it shows a guy that's grown up. I mean, it's just as crass and immature and like juvenile as his older movies, but it does feel like it feels different. So, like the movie, let's see. The movie starts off very much the way the first one did. It starts off with a montage sequence, and then it gets into the real story. One of the things I liked about this movie is while it was stupid and juvenile, and I don't say that in a pejorative sense. It's just like, it's not overtly deep. The movie was also surprisingly heartfelt. I am going to be dropping spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and see it. It's funny. So it uses a trope that a lot of movies do, but I think it uses it effectively. It's revealed that between the first movie and the second movie, Happy Gilmore got married to his love interest from the first movie. They started a family, and he was thinking of retiring, but then she told him, "No, you're a golfer. You got to keep going on." And he swung a hit, and that hit wound up hitting her and killing her. And so that's why he has given up golf for so long. And the whole movie is about him, what brings him back to golf. What brings him back to golf is the fact that his daughter wants to go to school abroad and he needs the money. And the only way he knows how to make money is golf. And throughout the movie, the memory of his wife revisits him and tells him, like, she kind of spurs him on. Happens a couple times. And never feels false or contrite. It feels genuine and sincere. Like, you're beating yourself up. Like, yeah, something bad happened, but you're back in this for all the right reasons. I think there are a lot of movies where the love interest from the previous entries has either died on or off screen, and it's just used to give the main character an emotional crux that they have to overcome. Surprisingly, the movie that has done this the most differently and oddly enough least effectively was the second Austin Powers movie. And it did one of the worst retcons ever. I remember hearing about them like, no, you ruined something good. In the second Austin Powers movie, it's revealed that Austin's wife, Vanessa, was actually a fembot the whole time. And they really only did that so that Austin Powers could just continue being a philanderer all throughout the second movie, rather than deal with the fact that, like, okay, he's this charismatic playboy in the first movie who discovers the joys of monogamy. How can somebody who used to be that way still be flamboyant and over the top and charismatic without betraying this new thing that he's learned? They just really want to repeat a lot of stuff from the first movie. So it's interesting to use this trope of the deceased partner to give somebody something they have to overcome. And it's like, it can be done either very effectively or very poorly. And I think they do it effectively here. Because one of the things that is noticeable that I'm only just realizing as I am recording this podcast is there is not a love interest for Happy Gilmore in this movie. Like, he got his happily ever after, and he doesn't try to find anyone else, although there would be nothing wrong with that. I've known people who have lost their spouses and then they met someone else and everything was fine. But it's a surprising bit of originality that they don't give him someone else to pursue. His focus is firmly on he's doing this for his kids, and doing this for his kids is the best way that he can honor the memory of his wife. So the way the movie, I'll harp on this for just a bit longer and then we'll move on. But so what happens is he wants to retire because he's got everything he wants. His wife encourages him, no, you should keep golfing. It's part of who you are. So he does. She dies as a result, and that sends him into a spiral. He lets go of golf. He was going to do that anyway. And he descends into alcoholism. So because he gave up golf, he has no source of money and just begins to spiral. And he keeps making bad choice after bad choice. He loses that house that he fought so hard for in the first movie and gets in trouble with the law. One of the most satisfying bits of the movie is he has to go to a Alcoholics Anonymous or recovery thing. Anyway, it's run by Ben Stiller's character from the first movie, and Ben Stiller's character in this movie gives you somebody that you're allowed to hate without question. And there's a really great payoff towards the end of the movie, which I'm not going to spoil. I'll encourage you to go watch the movie and see for yourself. It's a very sort of, yes, this is great. Somebody getting their comeuppance. So one of the things that surprises me about this movie is it doesn't feel like, although it is a guy going back and doing the same thing that he did when he was younger, it doesn't feel like that. By all accounts, that's what it is, but it's different. I suppose it's different in that it is done successfully. And the way it's done successfully is it just lands. Adam Sandler hasn't really changed that much. I mean, he has done dramatic work. He's done funny dramatic work. Sometimes stuff that veers more funny, sometimes stuff that veers more dramatic, and basically every iteration in between. Now, I think the difference with him is that someone else could do all that stuff and it would change them and it would make them unable to do the stuff that they used to do. I think one example is, let's say Woody Allen, for example. Not that he was unable. For a long time, there was this criticism of him that people said, you should go back to doing comedy. We like your early funny stuff. And he did things more complex and nuanced that had funny elements, but just pure funny was something that he put behind him and he decided not to do. Another example that comes to mind is John C. Reilly. He can successfully go between doing funny, dumb movies like Judd Apatow stuff and can do real dramatic work. And neither one of those is compromised. So anyway, he yeah, Adam Sandler, he slips into this stuff. Like, I suppose a proper analogy would be somebody who used to play the violin and they take up the piano. And years later, they go back to the violin and it's like nothing happened. You would not know that they stopped playing a while ago. Which is, he has made these same kinds of comedies before. But, there's just a consistency. I guess that's what it's taken me so long to say. Nothing feels so changed. But there is sort of a feeling all throughout the movie that it has this kind of looking back quality to it. And I feel like that's sort of most evidence towards the end when he's sitting in front of a airport and he's in his car and he looks up into the sky and sees all these visions of people who have passed away. It's done to comedic effect. And then he gets in his car and it's electric. And it doesn't start up. It's like, I forgot to charge my car. And it's kind of a one good last laugh. And then just looks ahead at the road and you can see the mileage on his face. And he just starts walking. And you get this feeling of, okay, like, yeah, time has passed. I'm older. I'm going to keep doing things for as long as I can. And I'm only as young as I think. And that while there are physical realities you just have to deal with, so much of youth and vigor is attitude as well as maintaining yourself. Makes me think about, he was on Joe Rogan and he talked about how he was in such a great shape for Don't Mess with the Zone all the way back in 2006. And Joe Rogan's like, what happened? He's like, I don't know, I just lost track. And he keeps getting told, well, you could get back into it. And he's like, surprisingly, he does play basketball a lot. So he has at least that. So back to the movie itself. There are, one of the major plot points is there's this new golf league that's supposed to be big and flashy and not boring like traditional golf. And it's the main guy running it. He's played by one of the Safdie brothers. He tries to go after everybody from the previous golf league, the more traditional one, to get them to participate. And that's kind of the main conflict of this movie. There has to be an antagonist, someone to play a foil to Happy Gilmore sort of earnestness. Although the whole goal of this movie, Happy Gilmore, the only reason he gets back into golf is so that he can just put his kid through school. Interestingly enough, the reason he does anything is not for him at all. It's totally for someone else. Which, given the character's tendency towards, like, sort of violence and aggression, it's surprising. And I guess that's the thing that stays constant from this movie and the one from like 30 years ago. One of the things I do have to wonder that, it's kind of a goofy comedy, but that sticks out to me is this whole conflict between traditional golf and the sort of new hyped up golf league that this guy is trying to start. And the guy goes to great extent to say, I'm just perpetuating what you started. And I guess I don't see why new golf and old golf have to be in conflict. And Happy says, I can't believe I'm the one who's fighting for traditional golf. If there is any criticism, and again, this feels like nitpicking, is why they don't make more of a point of why are these two things mutually exclusive. But again, I'm probably just over intellectualizing something that doesn't need to be over intellectualized. They need a conflict that we can be invested in. Like one of the jokes of the first movie is that, and one of the sources of conflict that made sense was Happy Gilmore was not a golfer. He was this rough working class character who start fights and partying. And he brought that energy to golf, which was depicted in the first movie, very styled, formal, and he changed the energy. And the reason like the league allowed him was because he brought interest that they had sort of failed to get at that point. So, but it's a sticking point that I can just gloss over and enjoy because enough funny stuff happens in the movie. One of the things that I like is his caddy is the rapper Bad Bunny, who whenever something happens and he addresses the problem, his go-to line is, "Oh, do you want some breadsticks?" And yeah, it's funny. Um, Oddly enough, he plays an important sidekick. It isn't just the gratuitous celebrity cameo. Although this movie, if ever there was a textbook example of gratuitous celebrity cameos, this movie has that in spades. Surprisingly, I don't think I ever saw David Spade in this movie. But per usual, Adam Sandler brings in his group of buddies that he's known for decades. And it's really heartwarming to see a guy that's got his friends back. Um, yeah, of course, Rob Schneider is in this movie. And of course, he does the line, "You can do it." And say what you will about Rob Schneider's politics and all that, you forget all about that. It's just a silly Adam Sandler movie and his goofy buddies. I'm trying to think of what other. Um, One thing that is interesting is the sudden death of Carl Weathers. Adam said that there was more, even though his character died in the first movie. He said somehow they were going to have him in the movie and it was going to feature heavily in the structure. So when he passed, they had to make some major changes. But they do have a nod to him, which is his character has a son that towards the end of the movie gives Happy some golfing advice. And the funny thing is, his kid just happened to lose his hand to a gator as well, which is just like, that's ridiculous. This is just conjecture on my part, but I feel like in an alternate timeline where Carl Weathers was still alive, the way they would have involved him would be, oh, it was his cousin or something, or his brother. He just looks just like him. That's just conjecture on my part, but they do have a nice nod to him when they have a nice nod to him when towards the end when Happy is looking up at the sky and sees everybody who's passed. Carl Weathers' character Chubbs is up there. So that was a nice sent off. I also recently saw the movie Little Nicky, and I saw Carl Weathers' character in that movie. Does make me wonder, do all of Adam Sandler's movies take place in the same universe? I'm sure there are Reddit threads and Facebook groups that have postulated on this. well before me. And of course, something that figures into the movie is Subway. Um, Boy, so much stuff has happened in between the first movie and this movie with Subway that I don't even want to mention just because of the controversial nature. But if you Google it, have safe search on. Well, one of the more surprising things was the enemy turned, I guess you could say, frenemy arc of Shooter McGavin in this movie. So that was something I didn't see coming. So when the bad guy of this movie like fails to get Happy Gilmore, he goes to Shooter McGavin, who's been in a mental I don't know if he has been in a mental institution or a jail. I don't know. Anyway, he's been institutionalized, and this guy uses money and connections to get him out. And somehow him and Happy connect, and he's like, they're trying to get rid of traditional golf. And in the big climax of the film, there's a team of the new golf guys and the old golf guys. And the old golf guys have Happy Gilmore and Shooter McGavin. So now they're on the same team. And surprisingly, yeah, there's never a moment where they become best friends, but Happy helps him get a shot that pushes them forward, which is cool. I didn't expect that. But it's sort of hard to do a review on a comedy film because it's like you want to talk about stuff, but talking about a joke is almost redundant. It's like, why don't you just go watch it yourself? Which, yeah, it's a funny movie if you need a good laugh. I think one of the things that comedy doesn't get enough credit for is, sometimes you do have to take your mind off stuff, even if it's important real world stuff that has real consequences that you've got to be informed about. Sometimes you've got to not think about stuff or divert your attention away from something. And I don't know why we look down on that. Like, I've had to unfollow a lot of people on Instagram, a lot of people who I might agree with spiritually, politically, to varying degrees, just because they keep harping on about stuff that I'm like, okay, that's great and all, but I still work a regular job. I've still got to be alive. Um, yeah, so I mean, there is a thing of taking in as many. There's a thing of not just shutting yourself off to information, like having a well-rounded opinion, but at the same time, people are people, and it's like, I guess the analogy would be there's only you have a limit of what you can consume. It's as true with information as it is with like food. Your stomach is only so big and it can only consume so much. And you've got to be careful what you put in it. Like, yeah, I feel like that's pretty solid. It does make me wonder when will we see a Billy Madison too? Yeah, I couldn't see that happening. Um, unless he like realizes none of those classes he did were documented properly. He's like, I gotta do all that again. Doing like a slight opera man voice. But anyway, I guess the whole thing that I'm getting at is, oh, before I leave, I guess I gotta say one of the funniest bits, of course, is Eminem playing the son of the heckler from the first movie, the guy that Shooter would pay to heckle Happy Gilmore and say rude things to him. That it's Eminem and like just goofy wig and beard. And surprise! What's funny is he dies getting eaten by alligators. I mean, it's PG-13, so it's not too gruesome, and it's made for comedic effect. But yeah, it's funny, and it's like it's one of those things that works only in a comedy. If this were like even just slightly more real world, like this would have stopped everything going on in the movie. People would have gone to jail. But again, it's a goofy comedy, and it's one of those things that shows the strength of a goofy comedy genre. It's like you can get away with absurd stuff that you otherwise couldn't get away with. Apparently, Adam Sandler was very hesitant to ask and then to do this because it was like it's a bit part. It's so small, and he's a busy guy, but they changed things. They try to economize their schedule so he could come in and get his stuff done really quickly and then get out of there. So it's a funny bit. Gosh, I'm trying to think of other things. Oh yeah, Adam Sandler's kids are, well, quote unquote kids at this movie are funny. He has, I think he has like 3 or 4 sons in the movie who are basically all his worst qualities made manifest. Like, I will say this about his character in the movie. He's just slightly toned down, but his kids are just as aggressive as he was in the first movie. And yeah, all in all, it's a good, funny movie. It's a good laugh. And sort of is, well, I was going to say it is sort of lowest common denominator humor, but at the same time, it really isn't. For me, lowest common denominator humor is the scary movies from like the early 2000s. Those movies are just stupid. Like, maybe that's what the critics thought about Adam Sandler's movies. And I don't know. I watched the first Scary Movie all the way back in the day, and it's like one of the few times where I've watched a movie where I actually felt more stupid for having watched it. Um, Oddly enough, I did watch Not Another Teen Movie, and I thought, okay, this is well constructed, well put together, and it's from like the same people, but just in general, like throughout the 2000s and sort of teetered off in the 2010s, all those parody movies were just awful. They just kept getting worse and worse, and it's like, oh, we're imitating something, therefore that's funny. Or it was just like, oh, this thing, but just slight deviation. Uh, I I always had the same thoughts, like they're still making this. I can't believe it. Who knows? Maybe people felt the same way about Adam Sandler, but yeah, they're still gas in his tank. He's still going, and it's like kudos to him. Like, I kind of feel like I'm sure people would argue this, but I feel like he's sort of the modern day equivalent of Charlie Chaplin, who he got no respect in his career. And but he kept making movies that people kept wanting to see. I heard somebody else say that about Ben Stiller, and I can see that point, although, great contrast. Happy Gilmore 2 uses the dying partner trope vastly better than Zoolander 2, and I'll do a podcast about those movies, uh, why one worked and why one didn't work. But yeah, I'll save that for later. Um, well, I guess I'll go into it now. Like the the death of a partner trope in Happy Gilmore 2 was used effectively because I've said what I need to say. The death of the partner trope in Zoolander 2 was not good because it was just used to kill off his partner from the previous movie. That way, he could pursue somebody in the second one, and that didn't even go anywhere. But anyway, um, so I could try to tell you about all the jokes in the movie, but you'd probably have more enjoyment just watching the movie itself. I guess in summary, at the end of the movie, you feel like he overcame his trauma and he's helped his family out once again. Like, yeah, it's a good movie. And I just filmed this podcast having gotten out of bed, having consumed a C4 for just like, I don't know, 20 minutes prior, and got a long day at work. A long day of work, and maybe at the end of it, I'll put on an Adam Sandler movie because those are funny. Still haven't seen any of the Hotel Transylvania movies, but who knows? Maybe I'll do a podcast about those once I get around to seeing them. Well, anyway, this has been the Hollywood Video Podcast. Go watch a movie and have an absolutely super day. Bye.